prepare the kickoff properly.
No, that's the way to actually start. Okay, everyone, this is the last session before the closure of the 2 days conference. This session is called Reflow and Beyond. So what are we trying to do, what are we trying to talk about here is basically trying to reflect a little bit on what we've been doing in the last 3 years, which has been synthesized in the last 2 days. But I mean, obviously, we know that circular economy is not just ending because Reflow is ending. There's a lot of work to do in circular cities. So we want to actually try to sit down and reflect on what we've been doing within Reflow, and that's why Christiana is here as one of the panelists. But we also want to draw connections with other sister projects that are still active under the same funding line from the Commission, and also try to learn and draw bridges with upcoming initiatives, and also draw, I would say, connections with also organizations that have been trying to support cities and regions for many years. And for that, so we have Panila, which is a special consultant on environment, resource use, and circular economy for the capital region of Denmark.
Yes.
Also an active member of the City Loops project. So we'll hear a little bit more about that. And next to Christiana is also Agnes, which is project manager at ACR Plus, which is an organization that was created in 1994, actually. So dealing with cities and regions for sustainable resource management. So there's actually a lot of expertise from these last 28 years. You've basically done circular economy before we actually coined the term circular economy. So there might be some good learnings from that. So I'm happy to have you here for this last session, but maybe before we start, maybe a quick introduction from your own words about what's your background and then your connection with circular economy in cities.
Thank you very much. Very nice to be here. And wake up, everybody. It's the last session. We'll try to be really, really entertaining. My name is Panila Colberg. I'm from the capital region of Denmark. I work with circular economy, but within the region's geography. So I work together with municipalities, enterprises, and knowledge institutions on circular change, especially focusing on circular construction. And that's why I'm here, because I am a lead on circular construction in the City Loops project, which is Reflow's sister project. And we in the capital region, we want to make circular construction mainstream. And to do that, we need to address all of the challenges, of course, and we need to do some systemic change. We cannot do this alone, so we work together with all the partners I mentioned before, municipalities, enterprises, knowledge institutions, and we develop and design and run projects where we are trying to address those challenges. And we have a very special interest in doing that because the capital region is the authority on extracting primary resources, which is mostly in Denmark, sand, gravel, and stones. And we use a lot of that for construction. And in 10 years, we're going to run out of it in the capital region because there are no more areas where we can dig it up. So unless we find another area, which is not very likely in the capital region, we will run out of it, and we already import most of it. So we have a very special interest in using secondary resources instead of primary resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Agnes, maybe?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here, representing ACR Plus. From the session, from the participation in the previous session, I see a lot of connections actually of the project with ongoing activities. About ACR Plus, ACR Plus is the Association of Cities and Regions for Sustainable Resources Management. As it was mentioned, we have been established in 1994. Starting from the need of not producing waste. We saw that waste streams were going into incineration, landfill and incinerations, and we saw that there was the need to make that not happen, and then to keep that waste keep circulating, and then the work on recycling has started, and that was back in the 90s. Nowadays we are at an evolution of this that is not only on the reduction of the waste streams, different waste streams, but also on indeed recirculating the materials that are within these waste streams, and how to enhance the capacity of local and regional authorities to do that in not only in an efficient but in an effective way. So about ACR Plus, we represent more than 100 members of local and regional authorities around Europe. We are present in 23 different countries, and we cover about 1,100 municipalities of different dimensions across Europe. Part of our members are also regional waste agencies that deal indeed with the management of the waste streams. And we are based in Brussels, which means also that we have strong connections with all the developments initiatives that are supported and facilitated by the European Commission. We participate in different platforms, the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, the EIT Circular Economy Program. We are part of the Just Transition Platform. Through this connection, we try to build a community of practices for authorities, public authorities, to engage into these processes and to take action in it. So.
All right, thank you. Quite extensive. So before going back to the work Panila has been doing in City Loops and what you actually are also working on, I'm going to say I would like to ask Christiana, now that we are almost at the end of Reflow, it's been an interesting journey, obviously, for all of us here. But what have you learned in the last 3 years? What do you think are the key learning aspects that you would like to actually transmit to upcoming project leaders or to actually networks of cities and regions?
Thank you, Erwin. That's a big question, and how many hours do I have to answer that? I think coming before Reflow, when we were starting our application, we had a few ideas that were preconcept and that we needed to test in some way. For example, we accepted and we bought in the idea that in order to implement circular economy effectively, you need to be interdisciplinary. You need to put together a consortium that possesses very different competences and actually try to integrate that. And this is what we did in some way. We walked the talk on that, but then we soon realized when we started working that having different actors could also provide some challenges in the end. I think we came with different languages, we came with different, I would say, vision of the world, even epistemologies, if you want to think, understanding of the reality also of what circular economy was. And I think it was really interesting to see the process that we have been through over the years. And now I think the change in our methodology that we discussed this morning, I think also reflects how we thought initially it could be a linear process, but in reality it was a continuous improvement, and we actually understood that we could hit, we could provide impact at very different levels of society. And I also think another thing that we took not for granted, but that we wanted to actively pursue was a bottom-up approach. So we really wanted an active citizens' engagement in order for our solution to be relevant. And I would say that is important, but we also needed to learn how to actually engage in an effective way, and how we started with Fab Labs makerspace that actually were at the heart of our project, and they are super creative and very entrepreneurial, but also as part of the social movement. But we needed to learn how to embrace this this energy and also these ideas into the project itself. So in that sense, it's been a journey on how to implement what ideas we had initially in circular economy. So
Okay, thank you. So interdisciplinarity, bottom-up approach to citizen engagement. I think those are very interesting keywords. Do you resonate with those keywords in City Loops, actually? So maybe if you want to introduce City Loops,
Yes.
what's the scope and what you've learned already so far with this project?
Thank you very much. Yes, well, in City Loops, we are focusing only on 2 material flows. We are focusing on bio-waste and construction, and I am only focusing on construction. So you are going to hear a lot of examples from that today. But yes, I can definitely recognize that. And what I was thinking of today, what I should tell you, what should you take away from, what can I tell you that we can take away from City Loops that can be used in other projects and for replication and so on. I was thinking that pay very close attention to the different starting points of the cities. And as you say, you learn so much about all the differences. In City Loops, like in all cities, some of them had some mayors or politicians or management that was really interested into circularity, and some departments that was a little bit, can we just continue business as usual? And then we had some the other way around, where we had the administration that was really like, this circularity is a really good idea, and the politicians were like, yeah, not really. So we actually did some actions to push that forward. So we did, for example, when we started City Loops, we did a big kickoff where we invited all the mayors from the different countries. We have 6 different countries to get together in a big kickoff, and they were signing a declaration, and they were giving speeches about what they were going to do in their cities, and we of course made up press releases and videos and so on. And it was very interesting to hear afterwards, because I know that in one of the cities here in Denmark, Høje-Taastrup, the mayor had not thought about circularity before, but since then he's been tweeting and everything about circularity, and it really became very important to him, because he really got this was something where they could make a difference. So this thing about publicity, if you have something that you cannot get moved, another good step is to focus on what's in it for me. And we have been doing that in City Loops, for example, with tackling that. If we have some really good examples in some cities of what they're doing, then you should have them tell some of the cities that are lagging behind. You should have them talk to the management, to the politicians, explain those examples, present what's the benefits of it, and also make them understand that it's something they can copy. And we have had Roskilde do that in Mikkeli, and afterwards they found out that they could do this with the tendering of circular construction projects. That was actually possible, and that was actually something you could do, and it might work and might not be really expensive or really bad. So trying to move the politicians and the management. And then the other thing is trying to move the administration, because we have a lot of departments in the municipalities wanting to do business as usual. So what we also learned is, of course, first of all, you need a clear mandate from the management that this is what we want. For example, in the capital region, our procurement department, they thought that they were only being measured on how much money they were saving. And then I talked to the politicians, and they said, no, we have told that we want green procurement. I was like, no, you haven't. They are still being measured on something else. So this with a clear mandate, so that they are absolutely sure this is what politicians and the management want. And then you can start working on the change in the organization, where you can start to work with, we have experienced that you need to make some really, if it's a first starter, you need to make some really handheld collaboration on creating demonstration projects, really close collaboration on that as a first starter, and then a lot of communication in the organization about how you're doing it. And then when you've done that, you can start working on capacity building, where you go across the different departments, because it's not enough that we have either the waste department or environmental department. We also need the procurement people, we need the construction people, and so on. So you need to involve all of it. And I think that was the most important thing that everybody could take away.
Okay, so strong leadership, giving strong, clear mandate, importance of communication, capacity building,
Yes.
in a few words.
Sorry, it took me a lot longer.
One aspect that I think that may be similar in Reflow and in City Loops is that we actually are on a learning journey, different cities coming from different contexts, cultural background, but still willing to achieve the same goal. And that's a question that I will ask Agnes, based on your expertise or your experience working with, as a network of cities. It's like, what are the strategies or the best way to actually activate this sort of peer learning cities to cities so that we actually advance faster together rather than alone in our own little context?
Yeah, that's the challenge that we have to face. But what we saw is that you have to create connections between cities or actors that are at the same level of development or at the same level of maturity in developing or in taking, implementing an action, because they are facing the same challenges. They are facing the same questions. They came to the same cost-benefit analysis moment where they saw, okay, how can we actually make it work and make it affordable? So it depends. Then you have to align cities and regions that are on the same level of implement or similar level of implementation, because it doesn't make sense to take a front runner with a starter, because the gap is too big to be filled. At the same time, what works is the willingness of politicians, of or local institutions, or even the commitment of local organizations to push the process forward. Because if you don't have that, you spend really a lot of energies trying to motivate, trying to do capacity building where the need is not there yet. So you have to stimulate the need for it. And that's what we see. The other thing is like leading by example. So when you are able to show not only the process, but the results, and what does that impact on a city or a regional administration or a waste agency, then they can see, okay, this is something that we should take up to either reduce costs, reduce the environmental impact, deliver more also on social benefits, and that's how you should, I think, take action.
Okay. Cluster the cities, starters, pioneers, and then lead by example as keywords. One question I will have for all of you is that at least what we've seen in Reflow in the last 2 days and throughout the last 3 years is that we've been trying to activate different levers, I would say, instruments to actually move forward and pave the way towards more circularity. So we talked about awareness raising, we talked about capacity building, we talked about developing tech that can support product track and tracing, for instance. So there are different instruments that we can actually use to move a step further. What, according to you, based on your 3 different experiences, are the most important levers? So which ones actually we are sort of overlooking? So what would be actually the most important levers, or is it an integration of all of them?
Should I start?
Yeah, you can start.
Okay. Well, of course, it's an integration, but I think some of the most important levers is the framework conditions, which can make making the green and circular choice easy or the right choice. For example, some years ago, we revised the DGNB criteria in Denmark, and we entered some circular soil handling criteria. And now I hear from municipalities that they're starting to see private construction projects entering circular soil handling criteria. Haven't done anything but putting it into the DGNB criteria. So that's really positive. So framework conditions, and then secondly, also tendering has such a huge potential. But it also is very closely connected to risk aversiveness. and also I just want to do business as usual. I did this tender this way the last time. I want to do it this way again. So if you want to work with tendering, you really need to work with both capacity building and also operational instruments. For example, within construction, if you have a standard for how you're going to screen your buildings before you're going to do a demolition tendering, then you know what kind of resources you want to take out of the buildings. You could put it into the tendering, so you have an instrument that helps you make the right tendering and make the tendering circular. So I think that's the most one of the most important levers. I think I'll wait with the overlooked, because then you can get to say something too.
No, perfect. Thank you. Of course, the Reflow model was a perfect model, but but in that sense, I guess that there are elements that facilitated our work that needs to be underlined in this situation. For example, we started with municipality that already brought in the idea of circularity, and that in that sense, it's something that we have heard also as our panelists spoke throughout these 2 days, that removed what were the considered barriers for the initiative of citizens to actually implement circularity. So I think it's important to think in terms of an alignment of the local governance, so to say, and private. And I would say that also the focus on governance that is where we started with our project is also a key element that cannot be overlooked. In some sense, I also feel that we could stress even more the importance of governance, as understood as what are the levers, the elements that needs to be in place for the different actors in the cities to work together. And this is what we are also trying to do with our methodology in that sense.
Yeah, maybe what I can add is, from the perspective of a public authority work based on regulation. So when they are kind of imposed to implement a regulation, to adopt a regulation, EU regulation, national regulation, then that is one of the drivers that start pushing the change factor. The other thing I wanted to say is that local and regional authorities are often faced with the challenge of having the tools to do that. So they know it's important, but often they don't know how to do it the best way, or how to do it more efficient, and that's why collaboration, knowledge sharing is really important, because through projects like Reflow, through other projects, through other platforms and initiatives, this is where like the knowledge keeps flowing, and then you get inspiration about, okay, maybe I can implement this, or I can adapt this method, this business model into my own administration, and then start. But the important thing is also to get started. It doesn't have to be, okay, this is the perfect solution for my region. No, you get started and then you adapt it to what evolves during the implementation. So.
Okay, need for tools. It's good because we haven't actually highlighted that too much today, but we happen to have a couple of toolkits within Reflow that can actually be useful, free of charge, open access, to support authorities in starting designing their collaborative governance approach for circularity. So just as a reminder. Daniel, you were going to say something a bit more about overlooked.
Yes, and I'm really glad I waited, because I thought you were, I think actually you in Reflow are addressing something that is the most overlooked. That was my point, was that what I think is most overlooked is having this engagement of the citizens, where we try to also involve them directly in the policy making and in the dialogue with the politicians, because I think today the politicians are often really afraid to take the hard choices. And also maybe if they do, they will meet a lot of resistance in between the citizens. But if you have those processes where you enter this engagement and this dialogue where they address these are the challenges, we need to do something, then you can often actually see examples. We have a few examples, not many, but a few in Denmark where they have entered in this tough dialogue, and suddenly the city council had support to make some really tough decisions that beforehand they had not dared make. So I think that's actually, you are addressing one of the most overlooked but most important levels.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So different projects, some projects are ending, some are ongoing. We're still learning from it, but there's also new initiatives coming up. Agnes, I would like you maybe to tell us a bit more about the Circular Cities and Region initiative that is now officially open.
Yeah.
So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. That I think is really important. The CCRI CSO is called Circular Cities Regions Initiative Coordination and Support Office. Is a new initiative, springboard initiative of the European Commission that tries to, well, the main aim is to bring to a step further all what's happening around circular economy within the projects financed by the European Commission, and trying to create this wave of change. And this is why, well, I don't know if you already know about it, but the applications for pilots and fellows, as we call them, so is open. Who are these pilots and fellows? We are looking for cities, regions, and territorial clusters that are implementing circular economy plans, that are already implementing or they have in their planning the implementation of circular economy solutions, such that the office, the CSO office, can support them in linking their activities as public authorities with research that has been done, like in projects like Reflow and other CCRI-linked projects, to bring the change a step further. And the idea is to look at, well, we decided to have these 3 different scales, geographical scales, because it's important not to focus only on what cities are doing, but it's important to look at larger territorial areas where when you, for example, implement material flow analysis, you can also look at the linkages between urban and rural, urban and peri-urban areas. For who is interested, the application is open until end of April, and we will screen the applications based on criteria we have identified, and we will support these pilots areas in the development and improvement of circular systemic solutions that will hopefully determine the change in the way the local economy or the regional economy is functioning. So it is an enabler of change as an initiative. Yeah.
And that could totally be a follow-up for the pilot cities here that want to continue with developing further their solutions, I believe. Amsterdam, Velen, Cluj, Milan, Paris.
That's plenty. Yeah, it's good to mention that is one starter initiative, but is not going to be the only one. There will be other initiatives that will link with it to enlarge the arena of actors that are working on it. And something that maybe I could have mentioned before is that among our members, waste management agency, regional waste management authorities, what we see is that they are already looking beyond their territorial area of administrative area for collaborations on secondary material exchange, secondary material platforms. So it's like an enhancement of mechanism, but there is already a need, a territorial need that is expressed for going beyond the administrative boundaries of legislation. Yeah.
And I believe that for some issues, when we talk about food in the Milan case, I mean, going beyond the boundaries of the city are also important, like how to link rural areas, urban areas, and actually create circularity between those, at the border of those kind of systems.
Especially on food systems.
Very relevant.
There is the link there,
Pernil, from a regional perspective, actually, when you hear that there are new EU initiatives coming up like that, what would you actually want to get as a type of support from this kind of EU transnational initiatives? What exactly would you want to get more that you cannot get nationally or regionally?
Actually, I think what happens when you are in a project like you are in the City Loops or in Reflow, is that you bring together those cities. They would never have been in a network before. They would never have learned from each other before. And I think what you gain most is that they ask some questions that you would not have asked yourself. And they take an angle to solving a problem that you would not have thought of, because this is how you do it in Denmark, but it's totally different in Spain and in Finland. And so I think actually what we see is we learn from some solutions and some ideas that we would not have seen otherwise. And I think if I should change something, the way the EU do it, I think with the scope of the funding, I think it's very important that it's not only that we develop new ideas every time. I think actually this exchange is a real major game changer. This is where we move cities, and also I really like that we sometimes take on board cities that are not that far with circularity, and we have some that are really far ahead, and we help lift each other. I really, really, really like that.
Yeah.
Can I add something, because I believe I did not present CCRI well enough, because indeed the aim of CCRI is to create these connections, because on one level you create connections between the participating pilots and fellows that will work within thematic working groups related to circular economy. So there is a learning factor there on the participating actors, but there is also a inheritance of knowledge that is created and used by involving projects like Reflow, like your project and other projects, and with the platforms and with other stakeholders to keep the information, the action, the knowledge into a flow. So it's not gonna be one of the next projects that you do, you implement, you finish, and that's it. But I think this change from the Commission is, they see as well the need, and it's starting, and CCRI is meant to be changing a bit the structure of interconnecting the initiatives around circular economy.
Yeah. I think one keyword is really like circular community of practice. We really have the chance now that a lot of initiatives are popping up, a lot of learnings are emerging from specific cities, clusters, associations, sub-regions. But we need to share that. We really need to share and learn from each other so that we don't repeat the same mistakes or we don't reinvent the wheel 15 times. So I think there's really a challenge in bringing this kind of space where we can exchange knowledge, learnings, insights, difficulties, challenges, and learn from each other.
Yeah,
to me, it's really a key point, at least, that should be addressed further.
It's actually a way to accelerate the transition, because when you talk with peers that have done it already, then you don't have to go through all the learning process again, and you can learn from them and have the implementation time shorter.
And to make a bridge, actually, with this sort of idea of community of practice, there's this one question here that I think to me is important, because it's not only the voice of the people who are on that table to say, okay, what did we learn, what should we push forward, but to me it's important actually to hear something from you, because you've all been involved in a way or another in Reflow. So if you have a couple of minutes before the last question, to just go back to Mentimeter and actually put a couple of words of what are the things actually that Reflow, if what some of the outcomes of Reflow, if they should be pushed further, pushed forward, what should it be, so that actually that can be taken over from other projects, other initiatives, or obviously some of the members of the current consortium. So please take the time to do that, and I think we'll be able to see a cloud of keywords in a couple of minutes. One question for Christiana that I was interested in hearing from is, if Reflow had actually been extended by another 3 years, where would you have gone? You know, what do you think you should have focused on? Because obviously there's limitation. You know, we are now at the end of the project, and we're like, oh, we could have done that better, or we could have focused on that further.
No, absolutely. And I think in some way, I wish we really had more years, because we developed our prototypes to a level where we also help our cities go on by themselves. So we try to give them the agency to actually continue with that, and we try to equip them with tools that would allow them to go on. But I would really have loved to have more time to see why a city, to analyze why a specific city chose specific tools, because even though we have a toolkit, cities really used the toolkit in the way that they found more interesting, and different contingencies actually got into their choices and actually led to different outcomes when it comes to circular economy. And I guess it's interesting, it would be interesting to bring the project forward to actually think in terms of how can we tailor our solution better for different cities that have different governance situation, that have different environmental situation, that also consider and focus on social impact in a different way, and so on, so that we can, circular economy is defined as a vague term, but it's also because sometimes it is taken as written in in stone and considered an abstract term, and when you actually go into practice, each city has their own understanding. And I think that going forward, I think we would be really interesting to see how our model can adapt to other cities and can be evolved for that. That would be lovely to have.
Okay, good. I see a few words actually appearing on the cloud. It's quite interesting to see that the first one that came out as I was listening to Christiana was like collaboration, federation, collaborative network, federation. So we start seeing this need to actually have solutions that are collaborative, open source, and that actually are coming from bottom-up initiative. So a really an interesting set of feedback. Do you see anything that I haven't said? We see the Reflow tech solution, tech platform, as something also that obviously should be pushed forward. I mean, we introduced it in the morning. You saw how it can be implemented in the different sessions, site sessions. So I think there's indeed also a potential beyond the method, approaches, processes that were co-designed in Reflow. The open source tools obviously are something that have a potential to really disrupt the game. So that's, to me, also something that is important to highlight. Before we get to the end of the session, is there any questions, very important things that the audience might want to ask our three panelists? Any comments or reflections based on the cloud, maybe of words somebody wants to elaborate a bit further?
Yeah. Here, have a question?
Yeah.
I was wondering, when CityLoop's focusing on two materials, very connected but also different, and in Reflow where we focused on 6.
Yeah.
I think in Reflow there's been definitely pros and cons of connecting between different material flows, because in many ways you can learn across different fields, which is very interesting. On the other hand, they're also very different, and it adds a level of complexity and difficulties in overcoming or kind of merging. And since you have the experience now with working on two material streams, what is your perspective on that?
I think, I don't know if that's why, I think maybe that's why, but I think in City Loops, we are very focused on the material streams separately. So we are really diving, the people working with circular construction is really diving into this and being very focused, and the same with the bio-waste. So I think we've got a project that's very different in that way, because I think if we had had that many flows, it would have been very different arguments and discussions that we had between the cities. So now we can sit and really nerd into what are the main challenges here in this part of the value chain. How are we going to do this? How can we change that? And we can do that across the cities. So I think it's a very different outcome. And I expect also, with the focus on Reflow, on the collaboration and on the whole engagement side of the project, is why it fits. That fits very well with all the different approaches and all the different material streams. Whereas the other one, more focused, fits much better with only 2 fractions. Yeah.
Yeah.
About what would have changed, I have something. I mean, of course, we could have all done better without COVID.
Yeah.
And this disrupted not only presence, but organizational dynamics and logistics. It's terrible. It's nice that we are all here. I think that what we would have changed then, what would have changed is more contact with the pilots, working more with the pilots, closer to the pilots, closer to the sites, on sites, not only online. We miss that. What I can say for Dyne is that we are a non-profit, so we are not profit-driven, we are community-driven. So all the pilots, as long as there is a community behind the adoption of the software, you can count on us to support the software. At the end of Reflow, for us, the tech tools, the open source tech tools are not over, they are not like to be put on a shelf. We will continue to support them, so please do contact us, join the chat, and if you are using it, if there is a community behind, we are happy to support you technically as we have done during the project.
Thank you. Thank you.
Because we see a future in this.
So I think that is a good point to sort of slowly close the session, that there is a life after Reflow. There are local communities that I think have been quite tight in the different cities, and a lot of...
Contacted by the Fab City Hamburg.
Yeah.
We are working with them to adapt also the technology in that pilot, which is beyond Reflow, and we are further in the same software stack, so we're really looking forward to it.
Okay. So a life beyond Reflow is possible. Thank you very much to the 3 of you, yeah, we are now getting closer to the end of the official conference. But thank you.
Thank you, Ervan. Yes. So that's, and thank you. We definitely.
A final word.
So if I could have the final set of slides, yes. And now there's 1 hour of gathering as a close-up. Now I just would, please allow me just to say a couple of words to close these 2 fantastic days that we have had together. And I think I have had so many learnings. And I think it's due to the situation, we started with the first day online and the second in person, hoping that we could be together. But I think we had 2 different experiences, and in some way we gathered the best of 2 worlds, because we could reach out in the first day live a number of external stakeholders that were beyond what we could have imagined. And what we have discussed are some of the key findings of Reflow with external stakeholders, but also some of the key learning that we have had, and we actually see that they resonate with what our stakeholders said in many ways. When we started with governance and what are the issue of organizing collaboration and how the different public actors, but also private actors understand circular economy and how they want to engage in it, and how the barriers of implementing circular economy that we all face as citizens, but as also organizations, can be lifted, and how we can have more agency in this situation. We also focused on business, even though Reflow is not focusing on traditional business. Actually, some of the learning and some of the outcomes that we have can also be relevant for these actors. And it's important to hear the take on circular economy of this kind of actors, and how new economic system beyond the growth paradigm and imperative can be actually implemented. And I think it was a nice discussion to hear that actually we are closer than we could anticipate in that sense. We focus, of course, on policy and how what could be the role of political agents at different levels, from the European Commission to the national to the more local level, and how sometimes vague object that the European Commission poses to us can be translated at a local level. What are the issues and the dynamics that we face in that translation process that can actually lead to some element. We focused also on our key stakeholders, which are citizens, and I'm actually quite proud to say that Reflow took citizens seriously. So in that sense, usually citizens engagement can be a buzzword or a word that, of course, you have to say that because it sounds nice, but we actually started from a bottom-up approach. We have Fab Labs, grassroots organization, at the heart of our project, and this is where also our innovation grows, and this is really interesting. And in that sense, we also close with research, because we have seen also today, I think it was a nice link to this morning's session, we saw that as universities, we should have a role in actually engaging more in innovation action projects that can have an impact on society, that is actually measurable and relevant for different stakeholders. But of course, we face a number of trade-offs here, because on the one hand, of course, as researchers, some of us are interested in this kind of engaged research, action research, but on the other hand, sometimes more traditional disciplines like accounting, unfortunately, are really reluctant to take in some of this research. So in some way, I was glad that in some of our panelists, one of our panelists was the editor of a leading journal in logistics, and she said, well, I'm trying to get more and more papers that are based on action research within our streams. That actually it's something that is getting into our disciplines, but it's something that we also need to work actively towards in order for our research to be really meaningful and for us to be more impactful. But then today, I think we had a great start with the CBS Prorector and also the Green Transformation Officer, and I'm actually glad that these two leaders of CBS seem to take an interest in this kind of project and how that actually can impact the university going forward, and how researcher can be actually incentivized to provide this, because I think that this is really the future of this university. And this is, and based on that, we also, after that, we started to focus more on the tools that Reflow developed together. So we focus on city metabolism, and in that sense, we engage in a dialogue also with other concepts that are living within the current situation. So we talk about smart cities, we talk about different concepts that this morning we addressed. What is the difference? What is the future of this? Are those buzzwords, or how can this be relevant for the future? And then we had a very interesting presentation about the technology that we have been developing within Reflow, and that our consortium actually proposed. So the digital ledger technology that was proposed, and that is an enabler of the implementation of circular economy. We have seen also the methodologies and that were developed now. And then the cities had the opportunity to present their work in Reflow, which was extremely interesting. And for the pilots, I've heard a number of very positive feedback here, and I'm actually glad that they could get the opportunity to actually showcase the amazing work that they did in Reflow, despite COVID, as Jaromil before mentioned, that actually didn't make their life easy, but they managed to continue working. And then the final two sessions, the first one is social impact assessment. That is something also that Reflow presented as an innovation, because we adopted a different methodology than the one that are usually adopted within European project in general. And then we ended up with this final session on what is the legacy of Reflow and how we can continue. And hopefully we will have the opportunity to work again together and to continue our experience and to still develop the circular economy that you're all passionate about, and that is so necessary. But right now, I would simply like to thank you all for being here and for making this event so great. You really have been very relevant and engaging with your questions and with your participation. And I would also like to thank all the moderators, all the panelists that conducted very interesting and engaging panels throughout the 2 days, and it has not been easy because it was quite dense, but the attention never failed throughout that. I would also, of course, like to thank all our wonderful consortium. Thank you so much for collaborating with us. I think our collaboration, we grew on in our collaboration. It was a journey, let me say that. But I think that we should all pat ourselves in the back, because it's a wonderful job that we have been doing all together. And then I would like to say, I have to, in that sense, allow me to thank the Copenhagen Business School for allowing us to sponsoring us with this wonderful venue, allowing us to have the conference here, and also to Inge Askerhav and Anna Hammerson for being here this morning. But I would also like to call Dyne on the stage, and Erika and Andrea. Because is Andrea here? Yeah. No, don't run away. You all know. No. Yeah. And Anna. And you all know that without our project administrator, Dyne, without Andrea, without Anna, and of course without Erika, not only this conference, but also the Reflow project from our end wouldn't be a possibility. So thank you so much for all the work you have done. It's amazing. And now, I would just like to invite you to a bubble to celebrate with some bubble the end of these 2 days. Thank you again, and the drinks are outside. Thank you.